Unfortunately, our third keynote speaker, Dr. William Cohen, could not join us in person. Dr. Cohen is a retired Major General from the US Air Force and president and founder of the Institute of Leader Arts. He wrote over 50 books on leadership, business management, and strategy, published in 23 languages. Dr. Cohen sent us his recorded lecture, and he will be available for question via email. So, wait.
Boker Tov and good morning. I am delighted to be speaking to you from Pasadena, California, and helping to open your conference. I have chosen the theme of my presentation as Dare the Impossible and Achieve the Extraordinary. Helping me to do this, in the upper left-hand corner, you will see a picture, and this is Peter Drucker, who is my professor and is known still known internationally as the father of modern management, or even the man that invented management. And I'll tell you more about him later. In any case, Peter is right with someone who you do recognize also, and that is Albert Einstein, and he's in the right. Now, you may not recognize the individual below Einstein. That individual is me 50 years ago, because this is a 50-year-old story. Unfortunately, you can see me in the lower right-hand corner, and I appear to look much older than my professor. That, of course, is not true. So I included this photograph to show you how I appeared at about that time. And my profession, as you can see from the picture, was a little different than it is now. In any case, let's get started. Oh, I wanted to mention one other thing. Since this is not live, of course, I can't answer your questions right away. But at the end of the presentation, I will give you my email address, and I will, if you'll email me, I will answer any questions that have been sent to me. So now I think we're ready. Let's get started. We'll go to the second slide. This is our challenge. The challenge is that economic strength and social capital can lead to opposite outcomes. On one hand, it can lead to peaceful and productive relations, but on the other, it can also lead to war and conflict. And what you do will largely determine which outcome will occur. Well, I said things could go the other way, and this picture proves it. This is a painting, and it shows something that I'll explain in a moment. You see, what the colonies and what became the United States invaded Canada, then part of England, twice. First during the War of Independence, and then again in the War of 1812. This is a picture, however, of 1812, when we weren't invading Canada, although we had, but Canada invaded our capital, Washington, D.C., and they burned everything in sight, beginning with the Capitol building and everything else, every other public building. And things continued in this vein right on up through that century. In fact, in 1859, we had the Pig War with Canada, almost, which was over the ownership of a pig. And it was avoided at the last minute only by a British admiral who was pressured to go to war and refused to do so, saying, "I'm not going to go to war over the ownership of a pig." But this happened continuously, so relations were bad, and they continued that way right on up through the next century. And but today, I have to tell you that relations are so good that the border between the United States and Canada is known as the longest unguarded border in the world. Now, things can go the opposite way. It's interesting to me that Israel became part of the Roman Empire voluntarily, not by force. There was no Roman invasion of Judea. Instead, Judea was invited to join the Roman Empire for benefits, social benefits, physical benefits, educational benefits, you named it. We had wealthy Jews that were invited to Rome to be special wards of the state and interact with the young emperors who were being educated as well. All sorts of strange things. Judaism was declared the sole religion permitted by Roman law in Judea, and everything was grand. And to establish a colony, by the way, in Rome property, which we did. But that was one emperor. Another emperor came, and a third, and when he died, another emperor yet, and that was Caligula. And he decided, or he had, in any case, declared himself a god. He wanted to institute statue in all temples throughout the empire, including the art temple in Jerusalem. Not a good deal. We had riots. We had, in the middle of those, he decided that all citizens should be taxed, and they were taxed, and including those in Judea, and there was not happiness at all in the riots, and everything else. Everything else went to heck, and it was a bad scene all the way around. In a way, I would say that it was similar to what the Tanakh says, that man does not live by bread alone, and that there are other things that may be more important, including customs, traditions, religions, and so forth, all of which very, very important, and which were ignored by the Romans and caused the diaspora for us, and caused the beginning of the breakup of the Roman Empire. How do Palestinian Arab citizens of Israel perceive Israel? Some Palestinian Arabs, Christian and Muslim, have openly supported Israel and increasingly volunteered in greater numbers for service in the IDF, and some are in combat units. Why is that? Because they see themselves as defending the state against outsiders and foreigners. They've said that themselves. One young lady who just received her commission as a second mishneh stated, "This is my country, and I want to defend it as well." There are currently 6 Druze generals in the IDF, for example. However, in the latest conflict with Hamas, some Palestinian citizens of Israel have attacked Jews and committed other terrorist acts. This confirms a previous conclusion from the Tanakh that, true or not, they felt that their families were attacked. That means that the Abraham Accords, while a very important element, are not themselves a sole consideration for future relations, and all potential sources of conflict must be reviewed and resolved. First, who was Peter Drucker? Peter Drucker, in addition to being my PhD professor, was a type of genius that appears maybe once every 100 years. Worldwide, in many countries, if you're involved with management, you know who Peter Drucker is. There are Drucker societies all over the world in many countries to further his ideas. He actually died in 2005. But what was interesting to me is, although he was ethnically Jewish, I did not know he was Jewish while I was a student. I was amazed at his knowledge about Jews. He looks like a Jew. His name is Jewish. But it turns out that his parents converted to Christianity, and he was raised as a Christian. But he himself recognized that he was Jewish. In fact, in a paper in 1936 called the Jewish Question in Germany, he, in the very first paragraph, states, "I am a German citizen of Jewish extraction." He had fled to England in 1933, but it was published in Germany. In 1937, he refled from England to the United States, re-immigrated. Now, although unknown as such, many of his ideas are largely based on Jewish concepts. For example, his emphasis on innovation for every company that has to innovate constantly. He said that any company or organization that, no matter how successful it was, that kept doing what it had done in the past would eventually fail. Well, this is like tikkun olam, which is, of course, a Jewish concept of repairing the world. And many of his concepts turned out to be based on Jewish beliefs and sayings. His ideas have been proven in practice. He revolutionized management thinking, and this is why many call him the father of modern management, or the man who created management. So, at any rate, Drucker is a person to be looked at to see what he recommends, and we'll look at some of the ideas that may help us in our task in this conference. Now, Drucker said there were 4 essentials for good management and progress, and, of course, conflict resolution. First, he said there was relevant knowledge. That is specific information pertaining to the issue, not excluding quantitative factors, but understanding that management is a liberal art. Then he talked about the importance of self-knowledge. And self-knowledge, we can look at not only Ralph Lauren here during the Six-Day War, but also the Chinese general Sun Tzu, lived 2,000 years ago, wrote a famous book, which is studied in most senior schools in the military, called The Art of War. And in this, which was an eye-opener to me, he said that if you know yourself and your enemy, you can fight 100 battles and never lose. Well, that part I understood. But then he said, if you know only yourself, you will lose half. Okay. But then he said, if you know only your enemy and not yourself, you will lose all. Boy, that's an eye-opener. So that's an essential, self-knowledge. Wisdom, well, there's 222 references to wisdom in the Tanakh. But wisdom is very difficult. It requires that you have experience, that you do experience, so you take note, that you understand what went right and what went wrong, and that you make changes based on the errors that you made previously. Thus comes wisdom. Finally, we have leadership. Leadership, Drucker said, was most important of all the essentials. In Judaism, leadership is frequently represented by Elohim angels, who had both courage and understanding. Drucker said that was worth 50% of the whole thing. And he said there were two subsets of that essential. One, that you act with integrity, that is, you do the harder right rather than the easier wrong. And second, that you must be a leader of social responsibility and demonstrate social responsibility. Now, many leaders have said this, but few leaders say that you must do this. Many leaders say it. They say a leader should do this, should be of integrity, and should have social responsibility. But Drucker differed by saying that a good leader must do these things. So there they are, and that's what we will use during the rest of the presentation. Now, I showed a picture of Einstein earlier because it was interesting to me, although Einstein lived earlier than Drucker, Einstein used similar principles, and he did amazing things. This is something I had not known about Einstein. Without computers, lab assistants, or financial report of any kind, Einstein wrote and published 4 major scientific papers in a single year, 1905, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for Physics. Now, he did all that amazingly enough, and his theory of relativity was based on an imaginary moving beam. And that's why I have the little cartoon here. But his perceptions were relative to someone remaining stationary. And the EMC equation is probably the most best known equation in the world. It has to do, of course, with the conservation of energy, but he did this all without mathematical analysis of either one of these concepts, and without any computers. And again, he was working full time by the way, as a patent examiner in Bern, Switzerland, which is a low-level job, and he'd been passed over for promotion. So he did these 4 major theoretical studies and became world famous, winning the Peace Prize, or not the Peace Prize, but the prize for physics from Nobel at the same time. And he did all of these things probably in retaliation for being passed over. But any case, these things are effective. Now, while doing the impossible to achieve the extraordinary, you may find application of these 4 essentials useful, and that's why I present them. If, for any reason, you want to get hold of me to ask questions, my contact information is at the bottom of this overhead here. You can contact me at wcohen@stuffofheroes.com. If you want a telephone, I'm directly reachable by 01-626-39-1364. Well, I want to thank you for your attention and wish you the very best of good luck for your conference.